Part 19, the revelation of IÄSOUS CHRISTÓS. One Michael Wright, the one God. Part 16 was so long that I made it. It's actually part 16, 17, and then that 42-minute piece last night. I made that part 18. And so this will be part 19. And so the dreams in the movies before my creation of space. And I say the because dreams, the movies, because it's something that we as angels talk about, study, ponder. And so I talked about the movies and the dreams. I didn't actually define or detail what I meant specifically when I said I wouldn't call them dreams, I called them movies. And I said scripted movies, and that the scripted movies that I watched, so how was I watching movies, and what did the people look like? And so I did say that, that I had where I was watching, I had planets, or movies where I had scripted where there were people that were on a planet. And so these movies, these visuals that I created were more than just entertainment. These were grand plans. They were plans that I was making as well for creation. And so, always existing, to say that I created myself is right. Always existing holds true. So as long as it's not where you're saying that they're, in the way of where you're saying I created myself in a way of thinking that there's something before that. Yeah, because always existing forever, these are not words created. These things weren't words until I created them. So my life before I created space. So that where I said before there was chaos, that's why I put that in quotes. That was actually the story of my life experiences before I created space, created the first planet, and before I created my body, and before I created life forms. And so the first planet was not a planet. I say the first planet, that I don't mean that, I created a planet and it was stable. Like I created something, that was stable and before I created my body. I don't mean because I was creating things that faded away. They didn't last. And so without I mean, to say the physics of the planet, I mean, I don't have a body, I'm not actually walking on the planet, so the sense of feeling and touch wouldn't have been there either. So, it's a whole, visually seeing the planet, of course, in more than just 2 dimensions. What I'm talking about here, because the movies that I was watching were not cartoons. So I want to make that clear. I was watching movies that you would say, like you watch a movie now on TV. So I had clearly created peoples that were not flat, or were not and I had in my movies people that look how we look now. Of course, like I said, always existing. So this is before creating space. I mean, I was alive. I was a life, the light, consciousness. So of course, for creation is consciousness, is life, experience. And so creating something was not, and I was creating visuals. I was visually seeing, hearing, experiencing. Creation of life, experiences in a visual manner. So you can say there was, I mean, to put a time on it, I wouldn't really just say put a time on it. It's just an indefinite span of moments, indefinite, that as a light, and dreams. It's what I call them, dreams. The visuals, and of course I had words for what I was seeing. So life, consciousness, the words I knew that I was experiencing, understanding, and perceiving what it was that I was dreaming, that dreams that I was creating, visuals to see, transcends space and time. There was no space. Hadn't created space yet. There wasn't no time. It wasn't even close. Wasn't even close to creating a space. So the forms, the words, the cognitions, that you know what you're thinking. Your life, so you have to be thinking. So I was always thinking. Always a light. And so visuals, you could, I'll say this, the visuals were awesome. And if you want to say, it's like watching a big screen IMAX theater, and you at the, movie theater, picture show, and wow, So I was good. I was very good. So creating life like myself, that life, meaning thinking, they have voices because they thinking, because they are thinking. And they are their own self, individual self. And they can see, like how I see. So the life forms, they would, they can see me, I can see them, they can hear what I say to them. So that was the thing, was that, well, I don't, should other life, should they hear what I'm thinking? There would need to be a way where I can think to myself and decide what I want to say to them. So that, method of conversation, of developing conversation with other life in a way to where it made sense. These are all things that I developed before I ever even created space. I didn't create space, a plant just for myself, and then later on I was like, well, I might as well just have some other people to. Logically, that don't even that don't make no sense. Always existed. These moments kept going and going and going, and the prize was to create a life like myself. And so, how would they sound? And I had, different voices, and my voice being a man, and the sound of a voice that was pleasing to hear for me, that would be a female, a woman. These are voices, voices that I listened to, I created, I listened to and heard. So man and woman, before I ever even created space, was part of the grand magnificence, the greatest of creation that I was going to accomplish, and I knew I was going to do it, and there was not going to be anything coming in between that. So these dreams that I would have, and there was not space, but I could float around And there was I wouldn't say a time, but there was a moment that I created a way that I could see, like, what am I just saying? Because I can see. So and when I see, a visual, I can move closer to it. I can look closer. So do I have any kind of appearance at all? And if I did, what would it be? And so was that I should look like, I should have a visual appearance. And so I created a way that I could see myself, and what the appearance, the visual appearance that I had created for myself was a light, an orb of light. You say a ball of light. So it was a visual, but it was kind of like what you would call a mirror. I said, okay, I'm the light. So I'm the light, and I create visuals of light. That's how I'm seeing the dreams. And so I had created a way that I could record the dreams. I would go through phases where I would just create things and see how they looked, and what logic, what sense they made. And the main thing that I was wanted to see was life. Myself, a body, people that had bodies, woman, pleasant sounding voice, my interactions with a woman that had a voice or way of thinking that was not the same as mine, that would be my friend. And the backdrop, the scenery, where would we be and what would be going on. And so that is the main, that's creation. The scenery, a planet, stuff. If we had ways that we dressed, what would wearing something look like that we put on our bodies to fashion ourselves. And on the planet, how would we have the weather, a home. That was just stuff. It was things. That was the scenery. The planet, it was the houses, scenery, stars, all that scenery. The main goal, the prize accomplishment was life. Live forever. A woman. And to make as many life forms, women, and create as much life as possible. So in doing that, there would be, of course, men that I would create. They would, there would be women, different planets that have different appearances. But for myself, would be, the appearance, that I would create, that would be the best. It would be the appearance would be the greatest appearance of life forms that have a body and have an appearance. It's not just a light And so the appearances of life forms, how they life forms would look, talk to each other. These are all things I developed before I ever created space. I had, voices that I created, the sound, the tone of voice, that sound, it was like, okay, well, this voice, and and I had where, different types of way of talking and talking to other people. And so we're talking about personalities here. So I already had developed the difference in a male personality, which went with the voice, definitely went with that. And then you had female, you had women, persona, personality, voice. So the visuals, I wouldn't say I had like a bedroom that I would go and just lay down, but I had a little, I'd float over here and I would do that for a very long time. Not to put a number. And then I would create visuals of a whole scripted story, because I had planets, different life forms, and of course, I had visuals that were movies that I was recording these visuals. I had my way of remembering the visual, so that I could, what you would say, like, edit certain parts and make it one long picture scene. Visual, a long visual is the word, visual. And to scene. And I had appearance that I had created for myself in those visuals, how I would look. And so I had my voice, and I was interacting, and there was a lot of women in my visuals, and I had where it was, I had a planet where I would go to different planets, and of course most of the visuals where I was interacting with women were women that looked like angel women, because that was the greatest appearance for a woman that I had created. And so the most entertaining, of course, in all my visuals, I named myself, I was God. And so I had relationships with women, and they knew I was God, the creator, and I was creating them and creating the people on other planets. And I was the creator of all of existence in the visuals, in my visuals. And so I have visuals of the heavens, of myself with my women. I had the words Queen, Khaleesi, and a lot of those visuals had stories that I wrote. I had where I words. arrange the words, to write whole stories, which would be books where I had cataloged memories, where I had remembered whole scripts, and the visuals would go with those books, with those memories. The visuals, the words went with the script, with what I was seeing. And so when I created so many visuals and I had a new movie, I'd leave from where I was, which I wouldn't, really to say I'd left somewhere, but I floated from there to where I would view my movie. And so, I would sit I'd watch, I'd stay there and watch my movie play out. And so there were movies. I mean, I got very, very creative, and so I was doing other things other than, there was movies where I would go to a planet and there'd be people there and they didn't know I was God. And I had women, and because I was God, but they didn't know it. The people, they despised me, and I even had where, well, how would they not know I was God, and things like that. So I had created people on planets. This is far beyond when I first started creating life. I had plans, so far after I had perfected life forms that would live, have life, and sustain. So there's such things as, it was always how to do it, how to make it happen, though it makes sense. Schools, there's certain plans where people grow up from a baby, a child, until they reach the adult appearance. These are things I developed before I ever created space. This was the creative of life experience, was way more creative. I mean, to even say that, the planets, and that was scenery. And to say a long time that I had these dreams, these visuals, the visuals that I created to be movies, where I visually created in visuals, like, just a projector or, a movie on TV. I had the women that were attractive. I knew, okay, well, women that were beautiful, and then you had women that weren't, that, and of course it made sense that they despised the women that were beautiful. And I had whole movies around these and everything was always based on logic, what made sense. And so I'll go ahead and say this right quick. And I tell all my colleagues this: your voice was one of the voices of the women in my visuals. 'Cause, 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 'cause You know, of course. So the movies. Story of how people wouldn't know I was God and I, on a planet and experience. This was one of my movies. And so I had, I got this queen, she gonna know I'm God. These people, they go to war with them because, I was like, well, how would I do that though? Dude, I mean, I'm God and then my queen's an angel, so I really don't have no business being around them. So I just was like, I don't really, I didn't know how I could do that and make that happen though. Because most of the visuals it was us and we were in heavens and we were flying around the heavens and we were dominating, conquering, planets and, fighting other people's life forms and things like that. But I of course I had gotten very, very, very creative with my visuals, but things like that and those visuals where, I had movies where, it was just action things happening on, planets, but they would be involving other people because I'm God. It didn't really, how would that be something that my queens or my angels would do? Didn't really, I didn't know at that time, but I knew I could, I felt like I could make it happen. I just, how, the term, the words of how, it was just, I knew that the way to do it would have to be something where the people in those visuals that weren't us weren't life forms. So I just to simulate people. I'm trying to create people that's real, So but I did have those creative visuals like before I ever even created space. So there you go. And always existing. Those movies, visuals, I've watched them a lot and a lot always existing. So it ain't just where 100,000, 1,000 quadrillion, 1,000 quadrillion years that went by. I just all of a sudden now I don't remember. Experience. I mean, creative visual. Creator. I'm the creator. So I do. And so, the thing, I mean, and it really, to forget, I could still create those visuals even after I created space and just watch a movie. So how would I forget? You see what I mean? What is there to forget? Well, after I created space, I created my body. I was still watching my visuals. I knew that I was just going to create a life that was, was a masculine, a male voice that were, and I use the term asexual, not reproduce asexually. No, because you would say, God, I produce asexually, produce asexually. Nothing wrong with that. because I create women, and I'm a man, you know. So it's not saying, reproduce asexual. I just mean asexual because they, and I don't mean genderless. There you go. I didn't mean genderless. I was saying asexual. I genderless. I never said that. Okay. And so getting creation prepared for woman, like I said, I wasn't gonna mess. I was still watching my movies, my visuals. I'm making that. I'm making my women gonna be real. You got God, hey, nah. So my Khaleesi's, y'all have seen some of my visuals, and I tell you, I say, don't. It's not gonna be the same one it was before I created space. But I will tell you this: it's pretty close. There's a lot of scenes that were, and I can tell you that scene that was pretty close. Khaleesi's like, that dude look like me too. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, I mean, a little different, but She's like, that's my boy. I'm like, yeah, that's your voice. Like, Chris rehab. And, so I have, Khaleesi's where when I created Khaleesi, and years have gone by, and I haven't showed her the movies, I was like, don't tell her about that, just yet. I tell my Khaleesi's, don't, tell her about that just yet. And then there would be a moment where, like, okay, I'll let the Khaleesi's tell her about it. I'll even write that, how she comes to find out about, the movies. And so she'll come running to me. She was like, I'm nervous, but I gotta say it. I was like, what? You found out, didn't you? She's like, yeah. Was I in your movies? I was like, yeah, you were. She's like, oh. So that's how I developed. And that particular Khaleesi I'm talking about, just like my other Khaleesi, she watched a movie. It was visual. Just like how I created them. Much like how I created them, I could, and then show her the visual. It wouldn't be just, on a TV. I'm using the technology or hologram. No, I'm showing her the visual that I'm creating for her to see, and we watch it together. Just like how I created visuals for her space, I can visuals of light. So that's how I developed the interactions, the social interactions between life forms, to be able to think without being heard, by people that were around, and then to talk out loud, and to talk where they could hear, and then had to, because I had, of course, I had movies where I was interacting with, and so it was always where, okay, well, he heard what I was thinking, and I really wasn't talking to him. You know what I mean? So thinking, hearing, and talking, it was just thinking, having a voice, just thinking. It was like a 3 in 1, So to make the different aspects of where you were hearing what somebody else was saying, and it wasn't where it was your thought. You were hearing them, their voice. You were hearing sound. So sound, how sound would be heard, and how you would hear the sound without hearing your voice. You're thinking, having to think to hear it. And of course, these are things that I didn't as a life, that when I listen and watch my videos, my movies, I was always I was able to hear. And so the senses of how hearing, seeing, sight, able to see light, touch, taste, smell, talking, move, how you move when you have a body. All these things I developed before I ever even created space. So I had a lot of words before I created space. I had a visual of words dialogued in a book that I could go, check the definitions of what they mean and how I was using them in my visuals in the movies. That the movies that I created from the visuals, from the dreams. When I was finished watching a particular, like I said, the good movies, all of my movies, I kept track of them, because I would watch them again, and I was like, well, this part could be better. And so I got better and better at viewing the life experience as I experience life in my visuals, and then how others would experience life, how I experienced, which was to be alive, to be life. Seeing, thinking, speaking, hearing. And living forever. Because even the visuals, those people, I went to war with them, I battled them, they had to die. So, of course, my life forms I was creating weren't they were going to live forever. So I was making it happen. I was making life happen. I would leave from where I was watching the movie. Like I said, I really wasn't going anywhere. I'd float from where I was looking at my visual, my movie, and I float back over to where I just watch my visuals.